Welcome to the Insurance Brokers Podcast, Helpful Hints. Here we break down the best, most informative bits of our full-length interviews.
I'm quite interested to learn a little bit more about if I'm a provincial broker and I want to start to develop those Lloyds relationships, which I might not have at the moment. What do I do? How do I go about that?
I'm going to answer this in a couple of different ways, Sarah, if I may. The first is to provincial brokers that don't have any Lloyds relationships. Speak to your fellow peers. Speak to other local brokers in the same town, vicinity, or county. Or if you're in a network, speak to fellow network members and find out who they use. It's very rare to find one Lloyds broker that has the capability and or the capacity and indeed the relationships to place property, liability and fleet, as well as financial services stuff. And what I mean by that is your PI, your D&O and your cyber risks. So historically, going back 20 odd years or so ago, when I was working for another very, very big provincial broker, we had a different broker that we used for fleet risks, and we had a different broker that we used for liability and property risks. And both the Lloyds brokers always fighting and asking us to move our fleet account to the other broker and the property and liability account to the fleet broker. But we had such good and entrenched relationships with the two different divisions of those two separate Lloyds brokers that we decided that we were going to keep them separate. Turning 20 years on, I now use just one Lloyds broker for all my fleet, property, liability and financial services inquiries. So back to the question, find out what other brokers use, listen and understand and hear about the good, the bad and the ugly in terms of relationships, service. Have they got any dedicated authority binders? How long have the brokers been employed by that particular Lloyds broker? Because I think that's important. Find out the pedigree and the history, because that's also important. And I would always interview. I know it sounds a little bit potentially archaic, but interview the Lloyds broker. If you've got three that have been put forward on the table, X, Y and Z, go and interview them. Go to their offices, meet them. See if you can have a little tour. Get to understand the culture, because the culture's got to fit. Not only you've got to understand them, they've got to understand you. And all three Lloyds brokers that you might interview, you might not get on. And there's no point in having a relationship with somebody you don't get on with. So so that's my top tip. Go interview. Listen and hear. Because you'll always get a good story, you'll always get a bad story. Hopefully they're mostly good stories. But that's what I would recommend.